Hello, welcome to Living Korea by Vincent Song. In the mountains of South Korea, near Tongdosa, one of the nation's great Buddhist temples, there is a quiet path leading to hidden hermitages called Samyeongam. Before you continue, slow down. This is not a place you simply visit. Hidden beyond the famous path of the Tongdosa, there is a quiet temple, where rain sounds softer, where color breathes beneath ancient roofs, and where each season feels like a different prayer. Samyeongam is not the Korea's loudest beauty. It is one of the gentlest. So, for a little while, walk slowly, listen carefully, and allow this hidden place to quiet something inside you. There are places in this world that announce themselves loudly. Places filled with crowds, cameras, and noise. Places people visit so they can say they were there. And then there are places like this. Beyond the well-known path of the Tongdosa, past the footsteps of the hurried visitors, past the place most people stop, there is another road, a quiet road, a softer one, a road that does not demand attention but gently waits. Samyeongam does not try to impress you. It does something rare. It allows you to breathe. As the road rises, the noise begins to fall away. The air changes. The tree seems taller. The wind became gentler. Even your thoughts began to slow. This is one of the Korea's hidden treasures. Not hidden because it is unreachable, but because in a loud world, higher beauty is often overlooked. And perhaps that is why places like this feel so sacred. Not because they are grand, but because they remain. Here the mountain does not compete. The stones does not rush. The temple does not call out. It simply stands with patience, as if reminding every visitor, you do not need to hurry here. You are allowed to arrive slowly. And maybe that is the first lesson. That peace is not something you find at this end of life's journey. Sometimes it is simply waiting beyond the road we almost didn't take. At first, many people are uncomfortable with silence. We are so used to filling our lives with conversation, with plans, with distraction. But here, silence feels different. It does not feel empty. It feels full. Full of wind through the fine branches. Full of distant bird song. Full of footsteps on old paths. Full of rain touching wood and stones. In Samyeongam, silence is not the absence of sounds. It is presence of peace. This is a kind of place where you begin to notice things again. The curves of old roofs, the dance of leaves in the mountain air, the softness of most beautiful stones, the faded color of centuries painted by hand. Nothing shouts. And because nothing shouts, everything can finally be heard. Perhaps this is why temple have always mattered, not only as a place of religion, but as a place of return, a return to stillness, a return to humility, a return to the quiet self beneath all the noise. Buddhist wisdom often reminds us that the suffering does not always come from pain itself, but from the attachment, from the grasping, from the endless wanting. And working here, even for a moment, you begin to understand. The tree does not rush to become taller. The seasons does not resist change. Even fallen leaves do not mourn their descent. They simply become what they are meant to become. And maybe we too can learn something here. Maybe peace is not found by adding more. Maybe sometimes peace arrives when we gently let go. There is another kind of silence here, not only in the forest, but in details. Look closely. The fainted eaves, the dancheong patterns, the balance of color beneath withered wood. For centuries, the Korean temple artisans did not create this design merely for decoration. They created them with reverence. Each line, each flower, each symbolic color, a meditation of the hand, a devotion to harmony. To stand beneath this roof is to stand beneath living history. You are not simply seeing the architecture. You are witnessing patience. Patience carved into beams, face painted into color. Generations speaking softly through art. And perhaps this is what makes Korean temples so moving. They do not separate beauty from spirit. Beauty becomes spirit. Even the smallest details feels international. A reminder that the enlightenment may not always be arrived through the dramatic revelation. Sometimes it is found in the careful craftsmanship, in a repeated practice, in a quiet devotion. The same brush stroke again and again, until beauty becomes discipline, and discipline becomes peace. Samyeongam is never only one place. In spring, it breathes. Soft blossoms and the new leaves turn to old stone gentle. In summer, it dips. Green surrounds every loop line as if the mountain itself is protecting this sacred ground. In autumn, it burns quietly, red, gold, amber. A final breathtaking surrender. And in rain, perhaps its most intimate form, it listened. Rain on the temple roofs is not the sadness, it is reflection, a conversation between sky and earth. This is why some places become part of us. Beneath, we do not visit them only once. We return, and each return reveals not only a new session, but a new version of ourselves. The temple changes, we change. And somehow, through the quiet exchange, we begin to understand impermanence not as loss, but as beauty. Because what change teaching us to cherish, and what pages teach us to see. Eventually every visit ends. The pace back waits. The world returns. Phone rings. Scheduled resumes. But something is different now. Perhaps only slightly. Perhaps in ways too small to explain. But the mountain has done its work. The silence has left a mark. And maybe that's enough. Samyeongam may be hidden in Korea's mountains, but its true beauty is how it follows you home. In the way you breathe more slowly, in the way you notice rain, in the way you begin to understand that the peace was never somewhere far away. It was always possible. Waiting in stillness, waiting in beauty, waiting in your willingness to pause. So perhaps the greatest gift of a place like this is not what it shows you, but what it gently awakens. A quieter heart, a softer gaze, a deep gratitude for the things that do not demand attention. Yet the changes anyway, and so as we live, we do not really live, because some paths continue long after walking, and some temple remains long after seeing, and some quiet place becomes part of your soul. This is Samyeongam, a hidden temple, a living season, a quiet prayer, and perhaps a reminder that the world still holds a gentle place where we can remember how to be at peace. There is something ancient about the way mountains exist. They do not chase, they do not probe, they do not explain themselves. They simply remain. And perhaps that is why, when you walk among them, something inside us begins to change. Modern life often asks us to measure ourselves constantly, to be faster, more productive, more visible, more successful. We learn to count our days through the achievements. But here, the mountain offers another way. A fine tree spent by decades of wind is not less beautiful. A stone softened by rain is not unfinished. A face covered in fallen leaves is not lost. Everything here exists without apology. And for those who arrive in carrying the exhaustion, this can feel almost unfamiliar. To be somewhere that asks nothing from you, no performance, no urgency, no comparison, only presence. In Buddhist souls, there is often quiet understanding that the life becomes heavier when we resist its true nature. We suffer, not only because life changes, but because we wish it would not. That the mountain never argues with the winter, the tree never panics when the autumn comes. Rain falls, bees rise, leaves return to us, and none of it is failure. It is simply the way. Perhaps this is why walking through the place like this Samyeongam can feel like remembering something we did not realize we forget. That we too are allowed seasons. We are allowed rest. We are allowed uncertainty. We are allowed it to become slowly. And then maybe healing is not always about fixing. Maybe sometimes it's about accepting that growth can be quiet. Like moss on the stone, like rain on the wood, like a mountain that had never needed to lodge. There are few sounds, as gentle as rain, falling on old temple roofs. It does not arrive like noise. It arrives like remembrance. Each drop touching wood, stones, leaf, and earth. As so the sky itself has showed down to meditate. Rain changes Samyeongam. Color deepen. Green becomes richer. Wood becomes darker. The painted dancheong seems to breathe differently. Even silence changes. On rainy days, the temple feels less like a destination and more like a refuge. And perhaps this is why rain has long held meaning in spiritual place. Rain does not erase, it softens. It cleans dust from the forgotten corners. It reminds us that not all gray skies are empty. Some bring renewal, some bring stillness. Some ask not to escape the storm, but to sit beneath shelter and listen. There are seasons in life when we too feel like rain. Heavy with memory, quiet with sorrow, unsure how long the cloud will remain. But here, watching rain slide from themselves, eaves, one truth becomes clear. Not all sorrow must be resisted. Sometimes sorrow, like rain, passes more gently when you allow it to fall. And when it does, the world often emerges, washed, softened, and new. So perhaps healing is not the absence of sadness. Perhaps healing is learning that even sadness can become part of something beautiful. So many people have walked here before us. Monks, travelers, the grieving, the hopeful, the lost, the thankful. Footsteps across stones for generations, and yet the past remain. This is one of the quiet mysteries of sacred place. Human lives are brief. We arrive, we love, we suffer, we wander, and then we go. A place shaped by prayer, care, and devotion holds something beyond one lifetime. A lantern sways, incense rise, a bell sound once through the mountain air, and suddenly you feel it. You are part of something older than your worries. This realization can be strangely comforting, not because it makes us small, but because it reminds us we are connected to history, to beauty, to one another, to all those who also search for peace. Perhaps that's why the temple endures. Not as an escape from the life, but as a reminder that the life, however fleeting, can still be lived with grace. Each visitor lives, but each visitor also adds something invisible. A prayer, a breath, a moment of gratitude. And maybe that's enough. To walk gently, to notice beauty, to leave a place more reverently than we found it. Eventually, every sacred work becomes a return. Back down the road, back to traffic, back to responsibility, back to ordinary life. But perhaps ordinary life is not quite the same anymore. Because once you have walked through a place like this, truly walked, something changes. Not dramatically, not loudly, but softly. You may begin to notice sunlight differently, to hear birds you once ignored, to pause before speaking, to breathe before rushing. This is how quiet place continue living within us. They becomes not memory alone, but practice. A softer way of moving, a deeper way of seeing. And maybe this is the true meaning of hidden beauty. Not simply that it exists, but that once discovered, it changes how we see everything else. Samyeongam may remain in the mountain of Korea, but its lesson does not. That peace can be carried, that silence can travel. That beauty does not always need to be extraordinary to be life-changing. Sometimes a quiet path, an old loop, falling lane, and one slow breath are enough. Wherever you are now, perhaps far from Korea, perhaps carrying your own burdens, perhaps simply tired. May this place remind you there are still quiet corners in this world. Place where beauty does not compete. Place where stillness is not emptiness. Place where you may remember your own heart more clearly. And even if you never walk these exact stones, may you find your own Samyeongam. A place, or perhaps a moment, where your mind softens, your breathing deeps, and your spirit feels less alone. Until then, walk gently. Rest when needed. Listen carefully. And trust that the peace is sometimes found not in changing the whole world, but in finding one quiet place within you. Thank you for being here with me today in this quiet corner of Korea. Your time here means more than you know. If you'd like to keep working with me through the Korea's hidden place, deeper stories, and gentle moments, please like and subscribe. Your support truly helps me continue creating these journeys. Until next time, thank you, and walk gently.